Benjamin Hayes had spent 3 years buried in the bureaucratic heart of Earth's first interstellar communication hub, translating alien syntax that no one would ever read twice. On paper, he was an exolinguist, a term that sounded heroic at conferences and lonely at breakfast. In reality, it meant spreadsheets, endless grammar tables, and too many nights convincing himself that sarcasm counted as a personality. He cut through Riverside Park every afternoon to shave minutes off his commute. It wasn't much, but 4 minutes of trees beat 4 minutes of neon advertisements reminding him how little sunlight his apartment saw. That day, autumn was at its theatrical peak, leaves like fire, air sharp enough to taste, and Benjamin was mid-draft of his imaginary resignation letter when he noticed the child. The boy stood beneath an oak, too still for comfort, as if waiting for an invisible signal. 7, maybe 8 years old, dressed like any other kid except for the posture, precise, deliberate, calculated. Benjamin slowed, the instincts of a man who'd studied alien body language kicking in. Something about the boy's composure was off, like a translation algorithm running in a human body. "You lost, kid?" he asked, voice deliberately light. The boy turned. His eyes were dark, too focused, too calm. "Lost implies lack of spatial orientation," he said, every word crisp. "I know precisely where I am. I am uncertain what I should be doing here." Benjamin blinked. "That's philosophically advanced for someone who probably hasn't hit 3rd grade. "What is 3rd grade?" "Never mind. Are your parents around?" "They are not immediately approximate," the boy answered, like he was reading from a textbook on alien evasions. Benjamin frowned. "You've got a name?" "Arden." The syllables carried a strange melody, more sung than spoken. The linguist in him noticed it immediately, pitch contour, tonal resonance, almost like the spoken fragments of a non-human language. And now, he was hooked. When Arden pointed toward the playground, asking what that structure was for, Benjamin followed his gaze. "That's for playing," he explained. "You sit on the seat, move back and forth. It's fun." "Allegedly. The purpose is enjoyment derived from repetitive motion?" Arden tilted his head, fascinated. "When you put it like that, it sounds like therapy or a malfunction. But yeah, it's for fun." Against his better judgment, Benjamin offered, "Want to try?" Arden approached the swing like a scientist encountering a new species of danger. He sat carefully. Benjamin gave a small push. The swing moved, the boy's expression shifting from alarm to awe. "The velocity creates an interesting sensation in my torso," he reported. "That's called butterflies," Benjamin said. "Or maybe nausea. Jury's out." They found a rhythm, Benjamin pushing gently, Arden analyzing, the scene caught between comedy and quiet beauty. Arden's questions came rapid fire. Why did humans build structures for joy? Why waste time in ways that produced no measurable output? Why did they laugh even when nothing was funny? Benjamin's answers were half philosophy, half deflection. Because productivity's overrated. We play because everything else is dying inside us. He caught himself. That came out darker than I meant. We play because it's fun. That's enough. Arden studied him, eyes narrowing with analytical curiosity. "You are unusual," he said simply. "That's what my performance reviews say." By the time the sun began to slide behind the trees, the park was empty except for the two of them. Benjamin's thermos sat forgotten on the bench. Arden stopped the swing and looked at him gravely. "May I tell you something?" "Sure." "My mother wants to meet you, human." Benjamin laughed, startled. "That's nice, kid, but your mom probably doesn't want you inviting strangers home." Arden smiled then, an old, eerie smile far too knowing for his age. "You misunderstand," he said softly. "But you will see." Before Benjamin could reply, the boy walked away toward the dusk, his gait suddenly too smooth, too intentional. By the time Benjamin called after him, the child had vanished. He stood there in the amber light, alone with a sinking feeling that something vast had just tilted under his feet. Human, the boy had said, not sir, not Mr. That night, sleep brought strange dreams. The swing set floated in starlight, chains humming like radio signals, his body weightless, and watched. The next morning, his phone screamed, a sound that wasn't one of its usual alarms. The screen blared, Federal Priority Communication. Dr. Hayes, your immediate presence is required at Integration Center Alpha for a matter of diplomatic sensitivity. Transportation has been arranged. Refusal is not advisable. Not advisable was government speak for obey or something explodes. Benjamin brewed coffee, because nothing good ever happened before caffeine. An hour later, a black, silent car arrived. The driver's sunglasses reflected nothing. Any chance you can tell me what this is about? Benjamin asked. Information is compartmentalized, Dr. Hayes. Great. I love a good mystery before breakfast. They drove deeper into the complex than Benjamin even knew existed, past checkpoints, into a sublevel that screamed classified. The conference room waiting for him was sterile enough to offend bacteria. Deputy Director Morrison sat across from him, flanked by two men who looked like they practiced intimidation recreationally. Dr. Hayes, she began, for days ago, the Theoran Empire invoked Protocol 7 of the Interspecies Diplomatic Framework. Benjamin blinked. The Therans don't talk to us. They think we're primitive. Exactly. Which is why their request has raised concern. She slid a tablet toward him. He read it twice before his brain caught up. They're requesting a specific human representative, me? Yes. By name, employment history, and, curiously, reference to your recent activity in Riverside Park. Benjamin's hand froze around his coffee. Oh no, he whispered. Morrison's eyes narrowed. You've encountered someone? He exhaled. A kid. Weird speech patterns, weird questions, said his mother wanted to meet me. I thought he was just, peculiar. The room went still. Morrison exchanged a look with her aides. Dr. Hayes, Prince Arden of the Theoran royal family, was on Earth 3 days ago for a supervised cultural exchange. He evaded his guards for approximately 47 minutes. Benjamin covered his face with both hands. I accidentally befriended an alien prince. Correct. And now his mother, Queen Thesera, has formally requested you. Why? She didn't specify, Morrison said, her tone making the word sound like a threat. But refusing would be interpreted as a grave insult. Benjamin took a long, doomed sip of coffee. So they're sending a spaceship for a tired linguist who can't keep a houseplant alive. Yes. It arrives in 48 hours. You'll receive cultural training before departure. He stared at her. Can I at least finish my coffee first? You can bring it with you. As the meeting dissolved into briefings, implants, and forms he didn't read, Benjamin realized the universe had just filed him under cosmic mistake, pending correction. And he wasn't sure he wanted it corrected. The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of briefings, injections, and bureaucratic panic disguised as professionalism. Benjamin learned the fundamentals of Theoran etiquette: never make direct eye contact unless invited, don't touch anything organic without permission, it might be alive, and under no circumstances attempt humor during formal conversation, as irony was considered a sign of emotional instability. That one would be a challenge. He was fitted with a translation implant that hummed faintly behind his ear, calibrated to interpret not just words but harmonic intent, because apparently, Theoran language involved tones that could convey 50 layers of meaning at once. Do not sneeze while they are speaking, the technician warned. You might accidentally propose marriage. By the time his shuttle to the alien vessel arrived, Benjamin's nerves were scraped raw. The craft looked less like a spaceship and more like a sculpture that had decided to leave the museum and ascend into orbit. Its surface shimmered with living light, folding itself into forms that seemed to breathe. As he strapped into his seat, the view of Earth shrinking below him felt surreal, his blue planet fading into a marble in the darkness. For the first time in years, Benjamin was speechless, which for a linguist felt like betrayal. The Terran ship was worse, beautiful in a way that made his brain itch. Corridors flowed rather than ended, their walls veined with light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The air smelled faintly of ozone and flowers, as if nature had been reprogrammed to function inside technology. Every surface looked slightly alive. Even the floor adjusted subtly to his steps, suggesting unwelcome opinions about his balance. A guide led him to quarters that felt unnervingly aware of his presence. When he sat, the furniture molded itself to his posture. When he stood, the lights shifted in what might have been curiosity. The beverage dispenser greeted him in melodic tones he pretended not to understand. Benjamin was halfway through debating whether the offered drink was tea or hallucinogen when the door chimed. It opened before he could answer. Arden entered, wearing robes that looked woven from moonlight and bad design choices. "Benjamin," the boy said, grinning with an ease that didn't belong in a setting this sterile. "You came." "Let's say I was strongly encouraged," Benjamin replied. "Nice outfit. Must be a nightmare to wash." "These are formal travel robes," Arden said gravely. "They are uncomfortable and impractical." "Ah, fashion, an interstellar constant." The boy laughed, and for a moment, the tension bled out of the room. "I owe you an explanation," Arden continued, suddenly serious. "About why you're here. About what I told my mother." Benjamin gestured to the living wall that had been pretending not to eavesdrop. "Go ahead. The ship already knows everything, apparently." "I wasn't supposed to leave my escort on Earth," Arden said. "But I wanted to see real humans. My tutors only showed me simulations. I'd read your literature, studied your languages, watched your films. I wanted to understand you." Benjamin raised an eyebrow. "So naturally, you picked the saddest man in the park." Arden ignored the sarcasm. "Terrans are taught that emotions are data, useful, but not to be indulged. Attachment is considered a weakness. But when you spoke to me, you didn't analyze or correct me. You were kind. That's just basic decency, kid." "Not where I'm from," Arden said quietly. "When you pushed me on the swing, it felt peaceful. I told my mother that you made me feel like a person instead of a lesson. She didn't believe me. So I showed her." Benjamin's stomach dropped. "Showed her?" "My guards record everything," Arden said. "She watched the footage 17 times. 17. Benjamin tried not to picture it, the ruler of an empire reviewing a middle-aged man pushing her kid on a swing. "So, the queen binge-watched me being a mediocre babysitter." Arden nodded. "She wanted to understand why you mattered to me. Why, in 47 minutes, you changed the way I saw existence." Benjamin rubbed his face. "This is absurd. I'm a linguist, not a therapist." "It's not absurd," Arden said gently. "In Theoran culture, there is a concept called Kaseth. It means recognition, seeing another's true nature without judgment. It is how we define family bonds that transcend blood." Benjamin frowned. "You're saying?" "I experienced Kaseth with you," Arden said simply. "You treated me like a child, not a prince. That recognition created a bond. My mother wants to understand if Kaseth can form across species." The words hung in the air like static. Benjamin stared at him. "So let me get this straight. I gave you a push on a swing, and now your mother thinks I've redefined interspecies empathy?" "Yes," Arden said without irony. "Well, fantastic. No pressure at all." Arden tilted his head, studying him. "Are you frightened?" "Terrified," Benjamin admitted. "But also, honored, I guess." "Then you are feeling appropriately," the boy said, smiling faintly. "We arrive tomorrow. Rest well, Benjamin. My mother can be intense." When the door closed, Benjamin sat in silence, listening to the hum of the ship. Somewhere beyond those walls, a queen who commanded an empire was waiting to decide if he represented a new era of understanding, or an evolutionary mistake. He sipped the alien beverage. It tasted like citrus and regret. By the next morning, the viewport filled with colors he couldn't name. The Theoran homeworld appeared like a dream trying to become real, violet skies brushed with luminous clouds, cities spiraling outward in fractal symmetry, rivers that glowed faintly from embedded bioluminescence. Buildings grew as if planted, their surfaces rippling with veins of light that pulsed like the heartbeat of the planet itself. "It's like someone taught math to a forest," Benjamin whispered. Arden stood beside him, proud and solemn. "We do not build on our world," he said. "We collaborate with it." "Deeply enlightened," Benjamin said. "And mildly terrifying." They descended toward the capital, a living city of geometry and grace. As the ship docked, Benjamin tried to remember his training: don't stare, don't touch, don't faint. He adjusted the collar of the formal garments they'd forced on him, white fabric threaded with silver that somehow made him look like a misplaced choir member, and followed Arden down the ramp. The air smelled like electric rain. The welcoming party waited, Therans tall, elegant, their elongated ears adorned with metallic sigils. They looked at Benjamin the way museum curators look at abstract art, intrigued but unconvinced. "Prince Arden, welcome home," said a figure draped in silken authority. "And this must be the human." The word human dripped with condescension. "This is Dr. Benjamin Hayes," Arden said, his tone sharper than expected. "He is to be treated with full diplomatic courtesy." The official's smile twitched. "Of course. The Queen will receive you after you acclimate." Benjamin exhaled as they walked away. "Does acclimate mean panic quietly in a guest room?" "Usually," Arden said. "I will show you the palace." The corridors were vast and disorienting, walls curving into impossible shapes, light shifting with their movement. The air thrummed with music so faint it was almost emotion itself. Every Theoran they passed moved with mathematical precision, their gazes detached, their emotions folded away like artifacts. "Do you people ever just hang out?" Benjamin whispered. "Loitering implies purposeless existence," Arden said seriously. "We find that inefficient. You need hobbies. We have pursuits, science, philosophy, strategy." "I meant stupid hobbies. Ones that make you laugh." Arden blinked, visibly confused. "That sounds counterproductive." Benjamin grinned. "Then it's exactly what you need." He stopped near an indoor garden where the floor glowed faintly with living moss. "Okay, lesson 1, the floor is lava." "The floor is what?" "You can't step on it. You have to jump from surface to surface, or you lose." "Ready?" Arden looked appalled. "That is absurd." "Exactly," Benjamin said, leaping onto a stone ledge. "That's the point." Within minutes, the alien prince was laughing, his robes tangled as he jumped between platforms. Court attendants stopped to stare, scandalized. Somewhere, 1,000 years of Theoran etiquette quietly combusted. They collapsed at last in a burst of breathless laughter. Arden's hair was in disarray, his eyes bright. "We don't do this," the boy said softly. "Not like this." "I know," Benjamin replied. "That's why you looked lost in the park. You'd never seen anyone just exist." Arden smiled, a fragile, luminous thing. "My mother wanted to know if you could teach us something we've forgotten. I think this is it." Before Benjamin could answer, a servant appeared, pale and stiff. "Prince Arden. The Queen requests your presence." "Both of you." Benjamin sighed. "I'm guessing she saw the lava game." "She sees everything," Arden whispered. Benjamin ran a hand through his hair. "Fantastic. First day, and I've already committed high treason by teaching fun." They followed the servant through glittering halls toward whatever awaited them, judgment, discovery, or maybe something stranger. The Queen's solar chamber was not what Benjamin expected from an empire that worshipped perfection. It wasn't vast or intimidating but quiet, bathed in pale violet light that spilled through translucent walls, making everything shimmer as though submerged underwater. The air smelled faintly of ozone and some flower that didn't exist on Earth. Queen Thessera stood by the window, her silhouette framed by 3 hovering moons. She was both regal and terrifying, beauty sharpened into precision. Her elongated ears were adorned with jewelry that mapped constellations, her robes shifting like woven galaxies. Benjamin felt instantly inadequate, like a smudge on an oil painting. "So," she said without turning. Her voice carried harmonic overtones that made the implant behind his ear buzz. "You are the human teaching my son that floors are lava." Benjamin winced. "In my defense, Your Majesty, he needed to learn about pointless joy." The Queen turned, studying him the way an astrophysicist might study a potentially dangerous anomaly. Her gaze was both analytical and piercing. "Pointless joy," she repeated, testing the phrase as though it were a foreign spice. "Our scholars will debate that term for years." "I'd be honored to contribute to your cultural confusion," Benjamin said before his brain could veto the sentence. Arden made a strangled noise that might have been laughter, or horror. Thessera's lips curved almost imperceptibly. "Tell me, Dr. Hayes. What other human inefficiencies do you intend to introduce to my heir?" Benjamin swallowed. Sleep deprivation, sarcasm, and a deep appreciation for carbohydrates. For a heartbeat, silence ruled. Then, shockingly, the Queen smiled. "Interesting. Follow me." The throne room, however, was the opposite of intimate. It was architecture weaponized. Vast columns of luminous stone twisted upward, disappearing into the vaulted gloom. The air vibrated faintly with unseen energy. Court officials lined the edges in perfect symmetry, their faces masks of discipline. When Thessera entered, they bowed in synchronized grace. Benjamin resisted the urge to salute his way out of existence. "Dr. Benjamin Hayes," the Queen announced, her voice filling the chamber like music that could topple mountains. "You are the human my son calls father." The air froze. Every official in the room turned toward Benjamin, expressions ranging from horror to theological crisis. He heard his own pulse hammering in his ears. "With respect, Your Majesty," he stammered, "I think there's been a miscommunication." "I'm not. You misunderstand the linguistics," she said calmly. He did not use the word for parent. He used the word Kaseth, the one who recognizes without expectation. The distinction is sacred. Benjamin blinked. "You're saying your son thinks I'm family because I helped him on a swing." The Queen's gaze didn't waver. He experienced recognition. "That is not something a Theoran child fabricates. What concerns us is how. You spent 47 minutes together. In that time, you achieved what our people consider impossible, a bond transcending lineage and logic." Murmurs rippled through the court. The High Chancellor stepped forward, his voice clipped and cold. "Your Majesty, surely the child is mistaken. The human cannot comprehend Kaseth. It is beyond his species' capacity." Thessera's tone turned lethal in its calm. "I watched the surveillance footage 17 times. I observed this human explain play, speak of loneliness, and admit his failures. He was unguarded. Authentic. We are not." She looked at Benjamin again. "Tell me, human linguist, do you know what happens to a Theoran when they are authentic? They are shamed for inefficiency. We teach our children that emotion clouds clarity. That vulnerability weakens purpose. Yet my son met you and felt seen." Benjamin exhaled slowly. "On Earth, we call that empathy. Sometimes we get it right." A flicker of something, sorrow, maybe, crossed her face. Empathy. A word we discarded when we decided survival required perfection. The chamber was silent except for the faint pulse of energy humming through the walls. Arden stood beside the throne, small but composed, his gaze fixed on Benjamin. "Your Majesty," Benjamin said finally, "I can't speak for your culture. But I know what happened in that park. A lonely kid wanted to understand joy. And a tired man remembered what it felt like to care again. If that's what you call Kas-Seth, then yes. I felt it too." A murmur rippled through the court. Thesra's eyes softened, just slightly. "You would accept the bond? Knowing that in our law, Kas-Seth is permanent, an unbreakable recognition, binding souls beyond biology?" Benjamin hesitated. "I can't promise I'll be any good at it. My resume's full of failed relationships. But if Arden wants someone who'll push him on swings, teach him about lava floors, and tell him bad jokes until he groans, then yeah, I'm willing." For a long, unbearable moment, the Queen just stared. Then she did something that made every court official audibly gasp. She smiled again, this time warmly. "You are either remarkably brave or catastrophically foolish, Dr. Hayes." "Possibly both," Benjamin said. "Then let it be done." She raised her hand, and the air shimmered with symbols that formed between them, glowing threads of gold and violet light. The sound that followed wasn't music, but meaning, the translation implant struggling to interpret sacred language too old for humans. "Benjamin Hayes," the Sarah declared, "I acknowledge your Kas-Seth with my son. You are henceforth recognized as Kas-Seth father, with all rights and responsibilities. You may visit freely, speak without restriction, and share in his education." Benjamin's throat went dry. "Does that come with a handbook? Maybe a hotline?" "You'll learn," the Queen said. Kas-Seth means seeing clearly enough to navigate without maps. At that, Arden broke protocol entirely. He actually ran, across the polished floor and threw his arms around Benjamin. The linguist froze, then hugged him back, ignoring the horrified gasps echoing from the dignitaries. The boy was trembling with joy. "I told you she wanted to meet you," Arden whispered. "You could have mentioned it was a royal evaluation of my soul," Benjamin muttered. "Where's the fun in that?" The Queen's expression remained inscrutable, but her eyes gleamed with quiet amusement. "You will remain here for one cycle. Learn us, and let us learn you. Perhaps inefficiency has merit after all." Some officials looked like they'd just witnessed the fall of civilization. But others, young attendants, scholars, watched with something like wonder. 3 days later, Benjamin stood on the balcony of the royal residence, gazing at the bioluminescent sprawl of the capital. The city pulsed in living rhythm, breathing, thinking, alive. Behind him, laughter echoed. Arden was teaching 2 dignitaries to play the floor is lava, their robes flapping as they leapt between furniture. Their dignity died noble deaths. Benjamin's communicator chimed. A message from Director Morrison. "Status update required. When will you return to Earth?" He typed back, unclear. "I've accidentally joined an alien family. Please inform payroll that emotional education counts as fieldwork." The reply was instant confusion. He turned off the device, smiling faintly. Maybe, he thought, this was what the universe had been trying to tell him all along, that connection wasn't logical, language wasn't just data, and inefficiency was the most human art of all. For the first time in years, Benjamin felt something close to peace. Not the sterile silence of resignation, but the warm, chaotic peace of belonging somewhere unexpected. Days on the Theoran homeworld unfolded like pages from a book Benjamin couldn't stop reading, each moment stranger, warmer, more alive. The palace itself seemed to breathe with him now, its walls shifting colors that responded to mood rather than command. Wherever he walked, whispers followed, the human, the empathic one, the inefficiency experiment. He pretended not to notice, but Arden did, glaring down every official who looked too curious. Mornings began with lessons. He sat beside the boy in shimmering classrooms where knowledge was sung instead of spoken, the air itself vibrating with meaning. Terrans didn't teach, they transferred structured waves of consciousness that his translator barely processed without frying his neurons. Benjamin tried to contribute human insights, explaining that on Earth, students learn not by synchronizing brain frequencies but by making mistakes. The teachers were horrified. They equate error with learning, one asked, aghast. Yes, Benjamin said cheerfully. We call it progress. Or humiliation, depending on the exam. Arden smirked. I prefer the human method. Afternoons became his favorite. They wandered the palace gardens, mathematical forests where plants rearranged themselves to form spirals as they walked. There, Benjamin showed Arden how to skip stones across a pool that glowed with its own light. The boy catalogued every splash pattern like data, but he also laughed, truly laughed, and every ripple in the water seemed to carry that sound farther. He told the Queen once, during one of her carefully orchestrated, informal conversations, that laughter was humanity's natural defense mechanism. Against what? She'd asked. Against everything that's too big to fix, he'd said. She hadn't replied, but later that night, he heard a faint sound, soft, melodic, almost like someone practicing how to laugh quietly in the dark. By the end of the week, the court had reluctantly adapted to Benjamin's presence. A delegation of scientists even requested interviews, fascinated by the neurocognitive aspects of empathy. They asked him to define compassion mathematically. He tried, failed spectacularly, then told them to build a swing set and find out for themselves. Arden, meanwhile, was thriving. He'd started organizing play sessions for young attendants, introducing every absurd human game Benjamin could remember. Soon, corridors once silent with protocol echoed with running footsteps and delighted chaos. It horrified the elders. The Queen, however, did not intervene. Instead, one morning she summoned Benjamin privately. He found her not in the throne room but in a glass pavilion overlooking the horizon, where the sky bled from violet to silver. Your influence spreads faster than my advisors expected, she said without preamble. You've changed him. Children tend to change themselves, Benjamin answered. I just gave him permission. The Sarah studied him. You make our perfection look brittle. I'd say it's just, lonely. The Queen turned toward the window. Do you know why we abandoned emotion, Dr. Hayes? Because empathy once destroyed us. Millennia ago, we nearly collapsed under the weight of collective grief. Logic saved us. But logic without joy breeds stagnation. Benjamin nodded slowly. You can't protect yourself from pain without losing everything that makes healing possible. She looked at him, and for a heartbeat, he saw not a ruler but a mother, exhausted, frightened, fiercely protective. I begin to understand why my son recognized you. He bowed slightly. He's easy to recognize, Your Majesty. He's trying so hard to be everything you raised him to be and something you forgot to let him be, a kid. Thessera's lips curved faintly. You speak dangerously, human. But truth often does. That evening, the Queen did something that shook her entire empire more than any political decree. She appeared unannounced in the central plaza where citizens gathered for state addresses, and joined her son in a game. The announcement came through palace comms so fast that half the city poured into the square, convinced it was some form of prophecy. They arrived to find their immortal monarch balancing on the edge of a fountain, instructed by a human linguist to pretend the water is molten lava. The footage later became legend. The Sarah stood poised, her ceremonial robes tucked into her belt, and leapt to a nearby plinth. The crowd gasped. Then Arden laughed, and the sound broke something open across the square, thousands of Therans exhaling centuries of solemnity. One by one, they began to mimic her. Within minutes, the most disciplined civilization in the quadrant was collectively pretending the ground was deadly lava while a bewildered linguist shouted, "Good. Now jump higher." By nightfall, the story had already rewritten itself into myth, the day the Queen touched the lava. Later, in the palace, when the laughter had faded into quiet corridors, the Sarah approached Benjamin as attendants cleared the aftermath of their ridiculous revolution. "You've infected my people," she said softly. "I'd call it a cultural exchange," he replied. Her gaze softened. "When you return to your world, tell them this: efficiency built empires, but inefficiency saves souls." "I'll quote you directly," he said, smiling. "Maybe put it on a mug." Arden appeared, breathless, cheeks flushed from laughter. "Mother! I beat the Chancellor in the lava game." Thessera's eyes glittered. "Then perhaps the Chancellor has learned humility." Benjamin looked between them, mother and son, logic and laughter, and realized something extraordinary had happened. The universe hadn't merely witnessed the first Kaseth between species. It had seen an empire rediscover its humanity through one child's curiosity and one man's kindness. The next morning, his communicator flashed again, Earth requesting his status, his return, his reports. He stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Tell Director Morrison I've requested indefinite field extension. Current assignment, teaching aliens to play." He didn't wait for a response. That evening, beneath the glow of 3 moons, Benjamin and Arden sat on the palace balcony. The boy's feet swung over the edge, his laughter echoing softly through the endless city. "Will you ever go home?" Arden asked. "Maybe," Benjamin said. "But home feels different now. Smaller, somehow. Maybe I'll just visit." "You'll come back. Count on it." Arden grinned, leaning against him. "You're terrible at efficiency." "I know," Benjamin said. "It's my best quality." The boys' laughter rippled through the night. Somewhere behind them, the Queen watched, expression unreadable but peaceful. For once, Benjamin Hayes, failed husband, reluctant linguist, accidental diplomat, felt perfectly categorized in the cosmic filing system. Not under bureaucratic necessities, but under something new, found family, improbable miracles, and interstellar inefficiency. The stars above them shimmered, as if approving the update. And that, dear listeners, is how one tired linguist accidentally redefined diplomacy, by pushing a kid on a swing and teaching an empire how to laugh again. Maybe that's the secret the universe's spreadsheets can't calculate. That kindness, however small, can rewrite entire civilizations. If you're still with me, maybe take this as your reminder: you don't need power, genius, or alien royalty to change the world. Sometimes, it starts with asking a stranger if they're lost and meaning it. Thank you for listening to this story of connection, chaos, and cosmic inefficiency. If it made you smile, or if you're now tempted to declare your living room floor as lava, then we've done our job. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with your fellow explorers of strange stories and human hearts. Next time, we'll travel even farther, because somewhere out there, another unlikely friendship is waiting to happen. Until then, stay curious, stay kind, and never stop playing.